Novak Djokovic's visa has been re-cancelled by Australian Immigration Minister Alex Hawke. Throughout the day, I've been gathering information, and I want to start here with the reason why this decision was made. And it's one of the rare instances in which both sides, Djokovic's legal counsel and the Novak team, and the Australian government have actually said the same thing. Djokovic's attorney said that Novak is basically being deported because the government feels his presence in the country fuels anti-vaccination sentiment. And then Mr. Hawke's office was basically like, yeah, that is why he's being deported. Let me read you a direct quote just to make this solid. This is from the office of Mr. Hawke. He said, quote, "Given Mr. Djokovic's high-profile status and position as a role model in the sporting and broader community, his ongoing presence in Australia may foster a similar disregard for the precautionary requirements following receipt of a positive COVID-19 test in Australia. In particular, his behavior may encourage or influence others to emulate his prior conduct and fail to comply with the appropriate health measures following a positive COVID-19 test, which itself could lead to the transmission of the disease and serious risk to their health and others." So he goes on to talk about anti-vaccination, but obviously that's more about COVID-19 pandemic responsible behavior. I have two major takeaways from not so much Alex Hawke's decision, but more his reasoning for the decision. First of all, Djokovic's errors in Serbia have been used against him, which I wasn't sure if that was going to be the case or not, because obviously when Novak arrived at the border and his visa was originally canceled, nobody even knew. Nobody knew when he had tested positive. Nobody knew anything. That has all come to light because they had to go to court. And when they had to go to court, they had to submit official documentation that had to be public because courts are public. That's when we learned when Novak tested positive, and that's when suspicions were raised about what he did after he tested positive. And of course, he made mistakes. Mistakes that he has taken responsibility for and admitted his errors. Here's the second takeaway. The Australian government has all but admitted that the rules permit Novak Djokovic's entry into Australia. Because, again, going back to when Djokovic's visa was originally canceled at the very start of this, the government's position was that Djokovic's medical exemption was invalid. That was Border Force's position. That was based on ATAGI guidelines. The Prime Minister reiterated that position, that the medical exemption was invalid. Well, what happened to that? That's gone. They have abandoned that as their reasoning, which essentially means they've waved the white flag, they've punted. If that is not, because that's the easiest way to cancel Djokovic's visa, is to just say, look, you don't qualify for an exemption and you're not vaccinated, and that's it. Again, my opinion has been unchanged, that this should have been very, very simple from the start. The validity of Novak Djokovic's exemption based on his positive test should determine whether or not he's able to enter. And it appears that that exemption is valid. And that essentially means that, my opinion, is that Djokovic's visa shouldn't have been canceled originally, that Renata Vorochova's visa should not have been canceled, and that the lines judge, the unnamed official, their visa should not have been canceled either. And you may say, well, it was a loophole. It was a loophole because that at least Novak used, because the exemption is clearly in place for those who don't have the opportunity to get vaccinated because they unfortunately tested positive. To which I say I agree. If you don't want people to use a loophole, then don't make a loophole. If you don't expect a loophole to be used, then just close the loop. Just say vaccines are mandatory. No exceptions. That would have fixed that, but they didn't. And I have approached this from a rules-based, kind of logic-based perspective. And that's why my stance has been that, again, the validity of his exemption should determine the outcome. But that's not what's happening here. Instead, politics will determine the outcome. At the end of the day, they're using Novak to send a message about vaccination and pandemic responsibility. You may agree with those messages, you may disagree with those messages, but they're using Novak to send those messages. Novak has become a symbol of the very thing their government is trying to combat. You can blame the government for political grandstanding. You can blame the government for using Djokovic as a pawn to send a message to the Australian people. The problem with getting upset with the government for that is, what do we really expect? Politicians like to make popular decisions. That's the least controversial thing I could possibly say, right? Politicians like to make popular decisions. That way they're serving their constituency. That way they can get reelected. Popular decisions. This decision is popular, and they are going to do that every single time. A poll put out by News Corp with over 60,000 respondents showed that 84% of Australians were in favor of a second cancellation of Djokovic's visa. A new poll on Friday showed that 90% of respondents thought that the correct decision had been made. Now, polls are not always reliable, but 84%, what's the margin of error here? Channel 9 also put out a poll, by the way, and 22.1 thousand said he should be deported, 5.2 thousand said no. This was a popular decision. So why was it a popular decision? It was a popular decision for three reasons in my book. First, Djokovic represents an unpopular view in Australia. He made a decision that many people in the country do not approve of, which is to not get vaccinated. And regardless of anything else, there's going to be a lot of people where that's a non-starter. And I want you to keep in mind, this is the general public we're talking about. They don't know how many majors Djokovic has won. They couldn't tell you. A lot of them have probably never seen him hit a tennis ball. They've never seen Federer or Nadal hit a tennis ball either. They don't care. They are not watching this channel. They do not care about Novak Djokovic. All they see is star athlete, unvaccinated, tries to enter country. And they say no to that. And that's it. There are other reasons, of course. Those who are maybe more in the loop and gather more facts. Novak has made public mistakes during this pandemic, and he admits to them. He apologized for the Adria Tour, and I believe him when he says his intentions were pure, but others may not believe him. He's also taken responsibility, as I said earlier, for appearing at an interview and photo shoot with the French magazine L'Equipe while knowingly COVID positive. These things are on him. These are public mistakes that he's made in direct relation to the pandemic, and that's going to affect the perception of him. Finally, the media, the thing that probably a lot of you guys wanted me to talk about, and I will. But I am going to be very specific. I mean, I'm the media, right? So be specific. Just say exactly who in the media and what they said and why what they said was wrong. There has been some bad reports out there that have been wrong. They have been fake news, and I will name them. The German outlet that scrutinized the barcode on Novak's test. It was debunked by tech people who understand barcodes. Anyone who reported that Novak was being investigated by the Spanish government for illegally crossing the Spanish border. That wasn't true. and it was out there. Anyone who immediately used the date that Novak got tested and assumed that's the date he knew he was positive, that was presumptuous. That was irresponsible. The media has made mistakes here that are unacceptable. So is Novak, and so is the nature of the vaccination controversy. I don't even know what to call it. Just the idea that vaccination is a polarizing topic. So that's really all I have to say. But my job here is a little bit difficult because I don't like to talk politics, and as a result, you may find me wishy-washy on this issue. You may find that I don't take a stance, that I'm not taking the side that you want me to take. There's a reason for that. This is political, and I don't talk politics. But I'm confident in telling you this. That's what this is: politics.